Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is mid-May of 2025 and right now it is EMS week. This is the first time, well actually I guess last year I was technically part of this, but this is the first year where I've really felt like I'm a part of EMS week and I am now technically a first responder. I work in emergency medical service, and in this video I wanted to share a story about the first double on scene I've ever done. So as a helicopter air ambulance pilot, sometimes you go to a traumatic call and there needs to be multiple helicopters. You'll typically have like a mass casualty incident and there's lots of ambulances, but the critical people need helicopters and they need to get to trauma centers. So this is the story of the first mass casualty multi-on-scene is the right word. There were just multiple helicopters. So I'm going to tell that story in honor of EMS week because this story really incorporates everyone in the EMS system. Really beautiful, really cool situation. Let's get into it. All right, so this story takes place last summer, the first summer that I was a helicopter air ambulance pilot, and I was working the night shift. Typically what I have found is the night shift always just brings more. And I kind of knew that from watching like EMS shows and talking to people that work in EMS and hospitals and stuff. But the night shift, weird stuff just happens at night. People start drinking, they start to do weird stuff, and things just happen on the night shift. So I was working the night shift. This was end of summer, so I believe it was like early fall time period, but it was still pretty warm out. I think this call took place at probably around 11 p.m. So I was the night shift pilot. I was with my crew, paramedic and nurse, and around 11 p.m. we get a scene launch. So I've explained this before, but for anyone that doesn't know, in helicopter air ambulance, we do inter-facility calls. So we take someone from one facility to another facility, from one hospital to another hospital, or we do scene calls. That's what you're probably more familiar with, is you go pick someone up in the field and then you fly them to the hospital. You can either get when they call the air ambulance company, you can either do a scene standby or get a scene standby or a scene launch. Standby is like, hey, we might need you, just get ready. Or a scene launch is like, hey, no, we're ready for you now. Come on, let's go. This was a scene launch, so they were ready for us now. Earlier at the start of the shift, we had done the weather briefing. I had sat my crew down, we went through the weather briefing, and it was a beautiful night to fly. We were pretty much all on the same page, and I had told them, like, if we get a call, we're likely to go. Like, it was CAVU, clear and visibility unlimited. It was a really good night to fly. So I told them, like, guys, if we get a scene launch, if a scene call, we're likely to go. So when the call came in, it was paged out, and we heard it, and I just went and double checked the weather, and we accepted the call. So we all load up. It's me in the pilot seat, my paramedic next to me, and the nurse behind me. As we're airborne, we radioed to our dispatch center or our communication center, and we're like, hey, we are airborne en route to the scene. And then at that point, the communication center, and shout out for EMS week, the dispatchers played a huge part in this story. The dispatchers told us the call. They said, hey, you are going for a stabbing victim. Now, I can't share any more details. I don't want to violate patient privacy rules, so I won't tell you the specifics of the patient, but we were going for a stabbing victim. So interesting, you know, sometimes you go for like kind of boring stuff, but a stabbing victim, that's kind of interesting. This was my first stabbing. So we continue en route, and the paramedic and the nurse, they're kind of briefing that, and then a couple minutes they're kind of briefing what they're going to do for the stabbing victim, the protocols. That's what they do when we're in the route to the scene. And I'm kind of thinking about like what I'm going to do, my high recon, my orbit. As we're a couple minutes later, as we're en route, the comm center updates us, and they're like, all right, hey, you are the second inbound helicopter. There's one helicopter that's there or just about landed. You're second inbound, and then there's going to be a third inbound. Really interesting. So this was the first time I'd ever done this. This is the beauty of EMS week and just all the people on the team. So the dispatchers, they did the vast majority of the coordination. I don't know how it works with any other company. I don't know this is the first helicopter air ambulance company I've worked for, so I don't know how it works across the country, but our communication center communicated with the other company's communication center and started kind of game plan it, and they talked with the scene commander and whoever was running the operation where the scene happened, and they did all the communication on the backhand. So they were all communicating, and then they communicated back to us. So we knew that there were going to be 3 helicopters. We knew that there was plenty of distance. They had all communicated that, and then they told us what frequency we could all talk on. Now, up here, where I fly and where we work, there's 1 or 2 frequencies that most of the helicopter air ambulances are on. So we were all talking on the same helicopter. So when I landed there was 1 helicopter already on the ground. So when I went through training, we kind of talked about this, but this was the first time it's actually happened. So it was really cool to see how this happened. So there was an incident at a house somewhere, and then they set the scene up over at the local, like, I think it was like school. I don't know what grade school it was, but they set it up at the local school, and you'll find that a lot in helicopter air ambulance, is there will be scene calls, and schools throughout neighborhoods typically tend to be like a pretty good place to set up, like a baseball field, pretty large, soccer field, football field. They tend to, lacrosse field, whatever. They tend to use fields a lot for scenes because relatively clear, maybe you got some goalposts, but there's typically not wires running across. It's a pretty safe area. So they chose the local school, which was pretty close to the scene. So, and they told us that. So as we're getting closer to the scene, the paramedic started communicating with the ground commander. So this is typically how it works, is when you go to a scene call, the fire department sets up the LZ. They determine the LZ. We do training classes constantly with them. So we tell them what we need. It's like, we like 100 by 100 square box, no wires, no obstacles. Make sure you check for power lines running across it. That's like super critical. Make sure that there's no FOD, no obstacles. Make sure that the landing zone is secure, that no one can come in. So the fire department establishes that, and then they have a handheld radio, and we can communicate from our aircraft to them via the handheld radio. So whoever is the scene commander or who's going to help us land, we communicate with them on that radio. Now, typically in my operation, that's the paramedic who does it. The paramedic starts communicating with the ground contact, and what we ask them is like, hey, this is the medevac helicopter, we're about 3-4 minutes out, can you give us a brief description of the landing zone and any hazards? They'll come back and they'll be like, all right, hey, you're going to be landing in a baseball field. There is a large fence to the east. There's some trees to the west. No power lines, no obstacles, and the approximate wind direction is out of the west. Sometimes they give approximate wind directions, sometimes they don't. So my paramedics started communicating with the ground contact, and they were like, hey, you're going to be landing in a baseball field, blah, 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 blah. There is 1 helicopter to the north side of the field. You're going to land to the south side of the field. Okay. Pretty easy. I knew my bearing directions. So eventually we come up to the scene, and I start entering a right-hand orbit. And I am already tracking the winds. So I knew during my briefing at the start of the night, I knew what the winds were likely to do. When I took off, I obviously listened to the ATIS, and I knew what the winds were kind of doing. En route, I was knowing what the winds were doing, comparing my airspeed versus my ground speed. And also on the helicopter I fly, we have a wind barb and a velocity barb. So all of these winds information were telling me approximately where the winds were coming from. And then when you get to the scene, there's sometimes trees blowing flags, dust, smoke. You can kind of pick up wind directions. So we enter the right-hand orbit, and we're looking for obstacles. I go through my acronym WAT feel: winds, obstacles, terrain, forced landing, entry, exit, landing zone. So as I'm in this right-hand orbit, I'm flying from the right-hand seat, and I'm entering this right-hand orbit. We as a crew are looking at this. Now we're looking at this through NVGs. It kind of depends on the scene. So for helicopter air ambulance operations, we fly with night vision goggles. You use those for the vast majority of the flight, but when you're coming into a scene, it does not make sense to have your night vision goggles up. So we flip them up because you can bloom the goggles out. When there's so much light coming into the night vision goggles, they just white out and it's not good. So you use your natural eyes. So I was in the right-hand orbit looking at the scene. We found all of our obstacles, and then we approach. One of the really cool things that you do on double on scenes, or that I saw on this particular one, is there were tons of lights. The fire department apparatus, the fire trucks, they had the scene lit up really bright. The police cars had this scene lit up really well. The ambulances were lit up really well. And the other helicopter, this was the critical thing. In the middle of the field, the other helicopter, I don't have any helicopters right here right now, but the other helicopter had his lights on. Now, specifically what he had on were his nav lights, his landing lights, his steady landing lights, and his steady searchlight, I believe. So why this is critical is because you have a nice field, but if that helicopter is in the middle of the field turned off, that first one on scene, if that helicopter is turned off, that's kind of dangerous because he could blend in even with that scene lit up really well. So he turned his nav lights on, so his red and green position lights, his white position light on the back. He did not have his strobes, anti-collision lights on, so there was nothing like blinking, which was really helpful. And then he had his taxi lights on, so two front lights on the front, and then I think it was an EC 145 maybe, or 135. It was either one of those models. And then he had his searchlight on. So very steady lights, and I got a very good perspective of his helicopter from the top-down perspective. This was the first time I've ever done it at night, like double on scene. I thought it was really great that he did that, and it was a great learning lesson just so that I could pick out exactly where he was on the field. So we come down, I set the helicopter down, and we know that there's a third helicopter coming. Well, right as we're getting there, and I don't know if it was like right as we were on final or something, or once we were down, but we were told that the third helicopter had been canceled. So, okay, good. I don't got to worry about a third helicopter coming in, but nonetheless, I was prepared for that. I set the helicopter down, and we shut the helicopter down. We know that it's probably going to be like a little bit of an extended period. I talk about this in some videos, but different companies have different policies, but at my company, sometimes we'll stay hot if we think that we're going to be loaded up and going pretty quick. Sometimes on a scene call, we'll shut down if we think it's going to be like an extended extrication or that they have a lot of work to do in the ambulance. So this particular patient was already in the ambulance. I shut down. They're like, it's probably going to be a little bit. So I shut down. They get out and they go into the back of the ambulance. And I'm just sitting in this field, taking it all in. And I wanted to tell this story for EMS week. I sound like a geek and I feel interesting saying this, but for some reason, man, I still get excited when I get around police officers and firefighters and paramedics, and you see all the flashing lights. That's the little boy in me. I just love seeing. It's just so cool, like to be near a scene where something cool has happened. Granted, I say this in every time I talk about like scene calls. This is the worst day of someone's life, and I do remember that. And that is always part of me, and I won't tell the patient demographics, but it was a very sad call. So that is always true. But on the other hand, it is cool to be like around like cops and police officers and paramedics. It's just, there's something about the lights and the adrenaline. So we shut down, they go into, my crew goes into the ambulance, and then I just sat there and talked with the pilot of the other helicopter. Now, all three of the helicopters that were called to this call were for a different company. What I wanted to say about this was sometimes, like on some nights, super quiet. There's maybe a helicopter out there. If you look at like ADSB Exchange or Flight Radar or any of these companies, there's some activity. Or some nights, everyone's going all night. Like there's just something in the air. Inter-facilities, scene calls are just. So this scene call, 3 different companies were called for this scene call. So 3 different helicopter air ambulance companies in the area were going to be on this one. So I talked to this pilot. I didn't know this pilot, really nice gentleman, very cool older guy, and we're just talking about the call and the specifics of this call. Like all I said was it was a stabbing victim, and we were just talking about that, which was kind of interesting. We're talking about all of the commotion. We're talking about the landing zone, what it was like. How he made his approach. We're just talking about pilot stuff, aviation stuff. We're just sitting there talking for 20 minutes, just shooting the stuff, you know? Really fun and enjoyable, talking about his company, his operation, whatever. It was quite enjoyable. My patient is ready to go, so they bring the patient back. And sometimes, I've said this before, sometimes my med crew will need my help to load the patient. Sometimes they won't. If you're hot and the helicopter's spinning, obviously you can't help them. But sometimes they help. I think I helped load this patient, and I climbed into the front. We started up the helicopter, and I was first to depart. So there were the two helicopters on scene. I was the first to depart. One thing, you're thinking about when you're flying over anyone, especially another helicopter, but anyone or anything, is your downwash. So where we were in this like baseball field and where I was positioned, I had to do a max performance takeoff. I had plenty of power. It was great. It wasn't like that hot, but the patient wasn't like too heavy and we had plenty of power. So I was able to do a max performance takeoff. Typically, you don't want to climb vertically for that long. You'll climb up to like maybe 100 feet. I don't know. It's hard to say like a set number. You need to be high enough to clear your obstacles and get ETL. But this one, because I had the power, there was just like plenty of power margin, and I knew that there was this other helicopter beneath me. I climbed quite high. So I don't know, maybe 200, if I had to guess, 200, 300 feet, and then started to accelerate, which is kind of high, but there was a lot of commotion. There was a lot of people, a lot of firefighters, police officers, a lot of hubbub, another helicopter. They're probably trying to get ready to load. So I climbed up quite high and then just worked my way forward and accelerated. We communicated, and then so when we're going to a scene, the paramedic or the nurse typically does a lot of the communications with the comm center, with the ground contact. When we're going to the hospital, it's just me up front and I do all the communications. And so I called our comm center and I was like, hey, we are airborne. We have 4 souls on board en route to the trauma center. We're going to be 25 miles. It's going to take us 12 minutes. So I communicated with the comm center and then we went. The comm center always does the initial dispatch. Dispatch is not the right word. Notification to the hospital that we're coming to. So I don't know if that's how it works everywhere, but our comm center will call the trauma center and be like, hey, we're inbound. But also the med crew in the back will call the comm center or will call the hospital via their air communication radio. So they will do a direct patch through the doctor or through the charge nurse. Depends on the type of hospital, but if it's a trauma, typically with a doctor, and they'll do the patch through and they'll be like, hey, we are bringing in this patient and it is a blah 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 age person with these things, and then they'll go through all their health metrics like blood pressure, heart rate, O2 sat, temperature, GS. I guess let me try to embarrass myself a little bit. I think Glasgow scale or something. It's a scale of up to 15, and it says how conscious the person is. I don't know if I'm going to include this, but they go through all of that. And they do the direct communication to the hospital, to the doctor. The doctor will give orders if they want. Like if the doctor hears some things, maybe they can put in orders for the med crew to do certain medical stuff to the patient while we're en route. But the point of it, we proceeded to land at the hospital and then go down. So the point of this video is it is EMS week, and I just wanted to tell this story because that situation was just like the most beautiful grouping of EMS and first responders that I had seen. It was really cool to see all the people come together. It was really cool to see the technology and the communication from all these different companies, all the technology, all the different radios, but they all worked. And it is something powerful to see these people that really care about helping their community come together. And this amount of people, the firefighters, the police officers, the EMTs, the paramedics, and then us. It's kind of interesting. Am I technically a first responder? I guess I technically am a first responder, but like kind of a second responder, because the first responders are like the EMTs and paramedics and they're the first to be there. But I guess I am technically a first responder, and what we do is first response, kind of, depending on how you think about it. But it was just really beautiful. Shout out to the dispatchers. Shout out to the mechanics. Shout out to all the people that are somehow involved in this, whether it's fundraising, finances, office staff, anyone that's involved in helicopter air ambulance. It is such a critical, beautiful thing. And everyone that's involved in first response, police officers, firefighters, EMTs, paramedics, it is such a beautiful thing, and I'm so grateful to live in a country and to live in a world where this happens. Especially here in America, we are very blessed to have highly trained, highly skilled people with great intentions willing to come and help you on your worst day, and it was just beautiful to see that. Double on scenes, and when you have large incidences like this just really put it into perspective. Sometimes it's just a small car accident. Sometimes it's like a stroke and you got to go pick them and it's not that much. But when you really see like the whole network and a large response, there is something powerful and meaningful about that. So there you go, a little bit of a ramble. I really enjoy my job. It is EMS week and I'm so grateful that I am in this profession. It is the coolest job I've ever had. It is the coolest career that I think exists. I'm beyond blessed to be able to do it. To be able to fly helicopters, but to be involved in EMS and respond on people's worst days and help get them the help that they need and be part of teams and communities and networks of people that really care about their community. It's really powerful. It is the way I want to live my life, and it is a really big deal, and I'm extremely grateful, and I'm extremely proud to work with the people I do and to be involved in this profession. If you are thinking about becoming a helicopter pilot and specifically in a helicopter air ambulance pilot, please do it. It is the most rewarding thing I've ever done. The joy that it brings me personally is undescribable, but also not only do I get so much joy out of it, but my community benefits from me, and I get to help them, and I get to be involved with really smart, dedicated, hardworking professionals. It is profoundly cool and exciting. So I'll wrap up the video there. I love this job. Happy EMS week. It's a pretty big deal in the EMS world. Everyone kind of gets excited for it. We celebrate it pretty hard, and there's a reason why, because it's really special what we get to do. So if you found yourself enjoying this video, smash the like button. If you want to become a helicopter pilot, please do it. If you have any questions about this career, this job, feel free to book a call with me. If you have any questions at all, I love talking to people. I love when people book calls and just ask me like how to become a helicopter pilot and how does this work in their individual situations. So I really enjoy that. If you have any questions, feel free to book a call down below, and I will see you on the next one. Take care.